So again, welcome back, everyone. I am going to begin the program tonight by acknowledging and paying respect to the fact that we in Philadelphia are located on the lands of the Lenni Lenape people. My name is Layla Cartier, Executive Director of Craft Now Philadelphia, and I am thrilled to always share this First Friday preview with you. This program has evolved into a casual industry night where those working in the field can convene, since many are starting to return to their galleries for First Fridays. And plus, we can expand beyond Old City here in Philadelphia with our presenters and our audience. So just to take care of a little bit of housekeeping while the room fills up, I want to let you know that we have enabled the closed caption feature with help from our friends at Disability Pride PA. I believe you can turn it off and on by hitting the CC button near the bottom of your screen. The transcription is not perfect, so please excuse any typos. And we are also asking everyone to stay on mute tonight to avoid background noise, but you can put questions in the chat and we will filter through them. And at the end, everyone will be invited to unmute themselves and say hello. So with that, I hope everyone has had a chance to settle in and you've poured your Manatoni Steelworks cocktail. Tonight, we have Pentimenti Gallery, Winterthur Museum, and Next Fab on the docket talking to us about some interesting exhibitions, works and collections, and upcoming programs. So for whatever reason, I did not list everyone in alphabetical order this time on the website. So we're going with whatever information I had at the time, and we're starting with Pentimenti. And I'm always happy to have Christine Pfister here of Pentimenti Gallery. They are hosting a two-person exhibition this month titled Breather, with sculptures by Austin Ballard and drawings by Erin Murray. Austin is here with us tonight, joining the program to describe his work in cane webbing and epoxy clay. And his abstract sculptures are quite incredible. The installation images are really impressive. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about his process. And Christine, with that, you and Austin can start the slideshow and make your introductions.
Yes, thank you, Leila. Good evening, everyone. I'm Christine Pfister, the owner and director at Pentimenti Gallery. And first, I wanted to thank Craft Now for inviting us to participate to First Friday preview, and everyone for joining us tonight. Maybe a quick overview of basically our two-person exhibition titled Breather. The pairing of Austin and Erin focuses on and highlights the 7 basic elements of art, which is shapes, colors, space, form, line, value, and textures. So both of the artists makes work that innovate, shape, celebrate forms, dances through the space, make decadent use of values, texture, and colors. Both of them skillfully create a playground of abstract imagery from dreamlike and shifting forms and lines. And I really invite you all to view these wonderful exhibitions before the closing date, which is this coming Saturday, which is March the 5th. So thank you all again, and I'm going to hand it over to Austin.
Thank you, Christine. Yeah, thank you everyone for coming. And thank you for Craft Now for inviting me. I'm going to start screen sharing with you guys so you can see a little slideshow. Let's see. Okay, is everyone seeing my screen now? Yeah, okay, great. Yeah, so thank you so much for coming. And yeah, so in this just roughly 15-minute talk, I'm just going to kind of briefly go over the works in the show. And then if there are any questions after, I'd love to answer anything in the chat, or if you think of anything down the road, shoot me an email. I'd love to keep the dialogue going. So this first image is of both me and Erin. I love this image. I think it really kind of encapsulates a lot about this show. When I got asked to do a show with Erin, I had never seen her work before. And when I did, I was blown away, and I thought it was a great pairing by Christine. I think we have a lot in conversation. And so when we were thinking about what we were going to title the show, a lot of titles got passed around, and then we ended up on Breather, which I'm really excited about. But for me, because I feel like it kind of personifies the object, right? So it kind of gives a sense of human likeness to these forms, which are seemingly inanimate. So, and most objects are. So I really like that connotation. And I also like the idea of this as a pause, as a break in an action, as something that's in between states of being. So when I think about making my forms, I like them to eventually rest at a place where you're not quite sure what's happening with the form. It's somehow in transition. It's somehow in transformation is taking place. So I think that was really kind of nice to bring that together, where she's bringing levels of opacity and movement in her drawings. I'm doing that with patterns. So I will kind of just briefly go through my bio. You can read about me. I'm not really going to talk about who I am in terms of what I've done, but there's a little bit of bio there for you. This image is another install from the show up at Pentimenti. This piece in the front is called Seer, and it's the largest work that I've made thus far. It's about 5.5 feet. And I think this is a little image that is nice. It's not of the work in the show, but it kind of gives you a little bit of a peek into my process. So the main material I'm using is cane webbing, typically found in chairs and furniture. So I use that as sort of a screen or a substrate. It's a pliable form that I can make objects from, and I combine it with, if you see here, this black and white, more graphic element, that is the epoxy clay. And so I combine those things to create a new sort of material skin to develop forms from. This was kind of born from my past in both ceramics and textiles. So in my undergrad, I worked in textiles. In grad school, I started to get into ceramics. Post-schooling, I started to combine the two, and neither really dipping my toes too far into one or the other, but just kind of creating something new out of this, which is why I love this discussion of craft, because I think there's so much more, and there's so much that craft can be and where it can go. And I really like thinking about these materials and these traditions as a starting place and thinking about how we can push them. So this is, again, Seer. I'm in the image for scale. Let's see, I want to. It's another image of two sides of it. In this piece, you'll see that this is the first time that I'm actually showing the inside of the vessel, quote unquote. So I've always been interested in the object as a vessel, but never usually showing the inside. But they're always hollow. But in this piece, it's the first time I'm kind of introducing both the process of making the form and how it's developed, but also the idea that it is a vessel and there is no core. So the same way you coil build a form, that's how I'm making these panels. So it's a mix of both, like coiling meets slab building meets kind of traditional pattern making, almost with clothes. This is Dappled Dune, Canary, Cavacha, and White on Palm. If you start noticing these titles and future pieces, the titles come from the colors that I'm using, and I like to compose them and almost like a poem. So there's a more narrative built into the object. Here I'm looking more at 70s patterns and palettes. So where sometimes they are really graphic and bold, just black and white. Sometimes I'm actually introducing color and being using a little bit more traditional patterns that you might find on clothing or handbags or things like that. And you can see in these details here on the right, the sort of pixelated quality that I'm getting, these dots, again, are coming from the negative of the cane, right? So where the cane creates a hexagonal weave, filling that negative space with the epoxy clay, extruding it through, that's how I get my surface, my pattern, my designs. So it becomes one uniform surface, but the uncanny ability of it to be like perfectly systematically even is because I'm using the cane as like a filter, as a screen. In this piece, I'm like kind of playing that up a little bit. So I'm using like gradients with my colors to kind of imply a little bit more movement and transition, while also kind of like winking at early 90s graphics, right? So if you think of like the Windows 95 logo and what that looked like, that's what I'm kind of like poking fun at with this. Dapple Dune 15, again, using these graphic meandering patterns. I like to use meandering patterns quite a bit. One, for their historical reference in decoration and adornment, usually on pedestals or around the borders of images, in Greek and Middle Eastern designs. But I also like the idea that it's a meandering pattern never ends, right? So it's always continuous. It doesn't break. And I like this idea in terms of its relationship to transformation, right? So this idea that it's always in movement, it's always continuing. So there's always a sense of movement and continuation within the form, even though the idea that the object is a static, solid piece. I'm kind of giving a nod to movement, transformation, and patterning is a great way to do that. Patterning is fundamental to my practice because I think it is ability to like bridge abstraction with the physical world, right? So within patterning, pattern making, you are both talking about design and form, but you're also alluding to what's not tangible and making that tangible in a really visceral physical material like the cane is really fascinating to me and why I'm continuing to work in this vein. This last image I'm showing you is of a wall work. It's so in the freestanding sculptures, there's a level of precarious balance that's happening. In the wall works, I'm starting to see them more as drapery. So I'm looking further into the patterns that I use, but in terms of how they drape, how they lay, and create movement from there, and then also bring a little bit more of the idea of the body in relationship to the cane, whether it's furniture or fashion. So the wall works are going to continue to kind of pull this drapery aspect. So I think that's it. So I will turn it back over and stop screen sharing now.
I think Austin, there's a couple of more images.
Oh, is there?
Yes. Yes.
While you pull that back up, there are a couple of questions in the chat.
Yes.
I think that was, yeah.
Oh, that's the last one. Okay, yes. Oh, sorry, I was thinking there was another one from the project room. My mistake.
I can leave this up while we have questions, or I can turn it over. It's up to you.
Sure. So one question from Diana: since the clay is unfired, are the pieces durable over time and in different atmospheres?
Absolutely. It's a air drying epoxy. It's essentially an epoxy, right? So we have to think about it as it's an industrial grade material. I mean, it can last below 50 to 300 degrees. It's used typically in a lot of engineering and mechanical uses. It can be outside. It's very hard. So the thicker you make it, the stronger it is, right? So I'm creating panels that are about 1/8 inch to like 3/16 thick. So think about a pretty thin wall of like a ceramic vessel. But it being reinforced almost with the cane, you can think about that as like, reinforcing concrete with metal mesh or something like that, or fiberglass or burlap. And so that's kind of where the idea came from as well. It's just a purely sculptural material. But yeah, they are hollow and they are shells, but in terms of the material itself, it's really strong.
They do appear to have this kind of delicate eggshell-like quality to them, but they must be quite sturdy. And they also appear to defy gravity in a way. Are you weighting them or?
Yeah, so in a perfect world, I try not to, right? So in a perfect world, I want the kind of the balance of the piece to just kind of just be, it exists, so same way like, a ceramicist has to like build upward, right? And so you kind of have to work with the balance as it's getting larger. For me, I can work on a panel, let it cure, flip it upside down, do another panel. So I can really kind of create forms in space unencumbered by gravity, essentially. And then at the end of the day, like, oh, this is the final orientation. And if it won't sit that way, then I can weight it. So then I'll have like, and so well, that's a great one, right? So that's weighted, and that's actually mounted to the table that it's on, so it doesn't fall over. This one is just sitting on its own weight. Again, this one is just sitting on its own weight, but it is weighted inside it, even though you can see inside, you can't see the weight. So it's part of the process, but ideally, I kind of like to just have the two materials in the form just be, but if it's like, it can't exist in the orientation that I want without it being weighted, I'll have to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the complementing patterns here are so nice too. Leslie is asking, is the caning bought like it's caning from chairs?
Yeah. So originally, I got into this because I'm from North Carolina. So textile mills, furniture factories are huge in my town. Not so much anymore. Everything's kind of gone overseas. It's not really an industry that's supported. But that's kind of how I got into textiles specifically, but ceramics and craft. The first museum I ever went to was a crafts museum. It was not a contemporary art museum. So like the art that I was seeing was clothing and vessels. They were like utilitarian objects. So I could see the art in them. But in terms of the caning, yeah. So originally I started just collecting broken chairs. I mean, you wouldn't believe how many people just will put up on Craigslist or, just put ads like I live in New York. So there's stuff on the street all the time. And so I started collecting broken rattan furniture and using that material to begin with. But then I started to make so much that I just couldn't collect as much as I needed. So now I source it from a factory in North Carolina. So I get it on a roll like you would fabric. And so I can cut my patterns, my panels that way, just because I build and make so quickly that it's not. A part of me would love the sustainability of purely resourcing broken, and in weaving it myself, but it would take way more time than I have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Western North Carolina, is that right?
Yeah, well, I grew up in Charlotte, so that's like more the Piedmont, which is like the largest city in North Carolina. But my family and everyone lives in Asheville.
Oh,
so I'm between New York and Asheville all the time.
I grew up a little bit north of you in Southern Virginia.
Oh, okay.
near
Yeah.
Bristol.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Austin. Thank you
You're
everyone
very welcome.
for questions. The work is extraordinary. I'm excited to see it at Pentimenti. I think we're going to move on to our next presenter, but anyone else that has questions, you can put them in the chat and reach out to Austin after the show, of course. Our next presentation, Puzzle Jugs to Posset Pots, Obsolete Ceramic Forms at Winterthur. I love the concept of this presentation. Things change, people's ideas of how to live, entertain, dine, and drink evolve over time. Senior Curator of Ceramics and Glass, Leslie Grigsby, is here with us tonight for a behind-the-scenes look at Winterthur Museum, Garden and Library's ceramic vessels, now outdated, and we're going to learn more about them. So Leslie, thank you for pulling some really interesting pieces from your collection to show us tonight.
Thank you, Layla. It's great to be with you. I'm going to try and see if I can shift, keeps changing on me, but just so I can see what I am showing you. For some reason, the speaker view is not working for me. I don't know if you've done a spotlight or not. There we go. Thank you. Wonderful to be with you. I am here at Winterthur Museum, Garden and Library, which is on about 1,000 acres, not far from Wilmington, Delaware. And it was the home of the DuPont family for well over a century. We have, as I said, 1,000 acres. We have 175 house rooms on 8 floors that you're welcome to come and visit. They're with early furnishings from the 17th through 19th centuries. We have 2 modern galleries and this study area that I'm in right now, which is where I teach in 2 master's programs for the University of Delaware. We have the Winterthur program in American material culture. So that's sort of for curators and maybe auctioneers and the like. And then we have the Winterthur University of Delaware program in art conservation. So this is a space for teaching and for entertaining folks like you who might come for a visit. Now tonight, what I thought I would do is go ahead and show you a few obsolete types of forms, even though I hope that I'm not obsolete as a curator. One piece that I selected was this one here, which superficially looks a lot like a teapot. You can see that it has a spout on it there. It's got a couple handles, which is a little different than a contemporary teapot. And just turning it around to show you the back of it. And if you would, yeah, we'll come in a little closer and come down a little bit with my helper here, Christine. And we're looking around, you can see the decoration. This is a lead glazed earthenware that has been opacified with the addition of tin oxide to the lead glaze. It's called Delftware. That may be a term that you've heard of before. Many other names too, including Maiolica and my personal favorite, which is Bastard China, because it was originally imitating Chinese export porcelain. So this spout that I was talking about, first, let me take the lid off here. And just imagine if you wanted to pour a pot of tea, what would happen if you tried to pour out of that spout? It just wouldn't work. I'm going to turn the pot a little bit so you can see where the hole is down at the bottom of the stem, I think, that dark spot. This spout is running right down the pot and is attached all the way down here. This was for a drink called posset, which in the Middle Ages was not uncommon as something that you would feed to, say, an invalid, food that would fortify them, strengthen them, sort of a liquid food that would be health-giving. By the time you get to the 1600s, though, it's become a more social drink. And this is for posset when you're sharing it among friends. It would consist of warmed wine and spices and sugar and most importantly, milk. And you would stir it all up together. And just as you would think, the milk would curdle, the curds would float up to the top. Sounds gross, tastes great. It's really, really good. I've had it. You would use this spout to suck the drink up like a straw. And once you had finished all that liquid, then you would use a spoon to eat that frothy, the curds that were on top. Nice thing is that this is a time before germs. So when you're with a bunch of friends, you can drink some of it and pass it to the next person and they can drink right out of that same spout. So this particular one has a lid that is inscribed. Let's see if I can turn it in the right direction, sort of doing things backwards. Ignore the number that's over on this other side. That's our accession number for the object. But it has the initials SP for the original owner. I don't know who SP was. And it was made in 1709, and you can see the date there. It may have celebrated some special occasion. We don't know what that is. The ornament on this piece is inspired by, it's loosely inspired by Chinese and Japanese porcelain designs. And then it also, in a way that only the English can do, brings in, of course, a figure of Ceres with a cornucopia. So she represents plenty. And they threw her on there. Her dress is not fitting as well as one might hope at the top. She's sort of spilling out of it, but it just has a wonderful sort of joyous type of ornament to it. It's hand-painted decoration on this. I'm going to bring you another one to take a look at it. This one here. This one is the same type of concept. I'm going to turn the lid a little bit so you can see some of the nice decoration on it. It has a beautiful butterfly and flowers that were directly taken from Chinese export porcelain. Same is true of those cloud scrolls that you can see running around the edge. This one dates a little earlier. That last one was 1709. And this one, I think you can see the 1676 date on it. And if I show you the other side, it also is inscribed. In this case, the letter C would be the last name of a couple, with W being the first initial of the husband and E being the first initial of the wife. This is a style of initialing things that was typical of England in that just before 1700 date. But it's a beautiful object. Just turn it so you can see the nice decoration on it. This again is a tin glazed earthenware. Sometimes they had a little problem with it. You can see where the glaze had sort of dripped. They painted it, and while it was being fired, it distorted the ornament. But I think a beautiful piece. You can see the throwing rings on the interior. This was thrown on the wheel with the handles being pulled, and then a rolled spout that has been hollowed out. So these types of drinks would have had a lot of joy associated with them. You're having fun with your friends. Might be having an intellectual conversation that descended into less intellectual stuff as you got further through the drink. But some of the ceramics here in the collection were made purely for fun. I'm going to put this here. And superficially, this just looks like a nice jug. It was made right around 1800 to about 1810 or so. And it is a lead glazed earthenware thrown on the wheel. It's of a type of ware that would have been called pearlware in the period, or queensware is another name that you might get for this. I'm going to turn it around. The ornament on it is all done in liquid clays, with the exception of these sort of leaf-like motifs that you see on the handle and the top. The clays were an iron-rich brown slip, and then some tinted green and red slips, as well as some cobalt added to the lead glaze for the coloring that you see up here. A little bit of green enamel on the rim. So like I said, looks like a kind of normal jug. The thing is, though, there's a bunch of tricks going on. Let's see if I can turn this, and I'm not sure if my helper here is able to come in right near where my finger is. You may be able to see right above my finger is a little hole. Also, if you look inside the jug, you can see this weird sort of ribbon-like thing going down in the interior. The handle is actually completely hollow, and the handle continues down to the bottom of the pot. Underneath that strap, that tubular strap that's going in, there's another hole. The bottom of the piece connects to that strap. So let's say I've gone off to another room. I've put my finger over this upper hole. I filled this with drink. I walk in to pour you a glass. I take my thumb off while I'm pouring. That lets air in. All of the liquid then comes pouring out onto the lap of whoever would have been the drinker from the underside of the pot. Does that make sense to you? Hopefully you can understand what I'm saying. It's just a trick. It's a lot funnier for the person who's doing the spilling than the person who gets spilled upon. But it probably was done in good fun, and hopefully everyone would still be speaking to each other at the end of the evening. Less likely to damage your clothes is another type of form that is called a puzzle jug. We have a lot of different designs of these here at Winterthur. I'm showing you one of my favorites. In this case, we're looking at a piece that is in lead glazed earthenware again. It's in slipware. In my world, slipware doesn't mean shaping things by slip casting, but slipware is objects that are decorated with liquid clay or slip. This is a rough red earthenware that was dipped in a cream colored slip. Then they cut through in a sgraffito technique to expose the colored body underneath. It looks very dark because there's a lot of iron impurities in that lead glaze. And so it actually looks much darker than it would if the thing were naked. You can even tell how this piece was fired. If we come in and look a little closer, you see these sort of weird, almost warts on the top. This piece was fired upside down and the glaze dripped. And so those are just drips from the glaze when it was being fired. So what is a puzzle jug? It is a type of object that is can be in many different forms. You find them from the Middle Ages onward. This is a sort of baluster form. It has a tubular rim that joins and opens into a tubular handle that opens into the bottom of the pot. The neck, I'm going to try and tilt it. You may be able to see there's sort of X-shaped piercings. Here's one right here through the neck. They can be in a lot of different patterns. This one just happens to have X-shaped holes on it. And then there's a nozzle up at the top. To drink from this, you would have to, in some cases, cover very complicated holes. This one just has one hole under the handle, which would allow you to have suction, and then you would suck the drink up through the nozzle. So it would be coming up through the handle and then around the rim and then through the nozzle. This one was made in Somerset in England. It's down in the Southwest. And it is inscribed around the neck, "This and the giver is thine forever." It has the date 1775 incised across the shoulder. Let me see if I can turn it a little bit. You can sort of see those sevens in 1775. You can see SW initials. Here's the S with the W over on this side here. That probably is the name of the owner, or perhaps the person who was giving this as a token of friendship or love to someone else. So this is a beauty. It's kind of clunky, a little bit folk art looking, but not all of them were quite that unsophisticated in design. In contrast, here is another puzzle jug. In a general way, it works very similarly to the way the other puzzle jug did. It has a hollow tubular rim. This one has 3 spouts on it. It's got, take a look at it. This one does not have, yep, there's the hole. There's a hole under the handle as the other one had. The tubular handle goes down and joins at the base of this sort of donut shaped well. The piece is inscribed George Hatterton, Acton Mill, 1814. And that would have been the person who commissioned it. It was made for him. He was an Englishman. This was probably made either in Staffordshire or perhaps in Yorkshire. It is a lead glazed earthenware of a type known as pearlware. I think I mentioned pearlware a little earlier. And it also fits into a category sometimes known as silver luster. And to create that kind of luster, they were using platinum. As you see, if I'm turning it, there's a little guy peeking out at us down here. And I can't really show it to you easily, but there's a whole little model of a lion who would have been available separately as a figure for ornament. but he's peeking out probably to make us smile, maybe referencing the Lion of England, could have been a symbol of patriotism. But it's a piece that I love dearly. Let's see if I'm gonna just tilt it down for you there, so you can look into it. And you can sort of see that donut shape well. You're seeing the top of it inside, and then those piercings. Would have been fairly complicated to use this one. Because you would have to somehow cover, probably one of these nozzles is blind. And so that's to trick you. And then you'd also have to cover a hole underneath to make it be drinkable. There are a few that are inscribed. One of my favorite inscriptions is one that goes, "Here, gentlemen, come try your skill. I'll hold a wager, if you will, that you don't drink this liquor all without you spill or let some fall." And on that note, that's all I was going to say, Layla. I imagine everyone's going to take sips from their own drinks at this point, but I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
That was a great way to conclude your presentation. I love poetry jugs with any old pot or crock or jug with a poem inscribed on it.
Well, I've got stuff for you here.
So do you get to bring these kinds of obsolete, in terms of their function, these pieces out very often?
A lot.
Yeah.
Yes, I did an exhibition a few years ago that was called Uncorked Wine Objects and Tradition.
Mm-hmm.
And it was about 600 objects, not just ceramics and glass, but many other things as well. And we actually put that online. That entire show with images of everything is online. And if you just looked up Winterthur and Uncorked online exhibition, then the whole thing is there, and all of our Posset Pots are in that show, and puzzle jugs and fuddling cups and trick flasks and all sorts of things.
Well, our friend Jen Zwilling said, great explanation, and she loved how shiny that piece is. And my friend David at Albustan Seeds of Culture also was interested in that last exhibit that you just mentioned. So it looks like Christine just put it in the chat too. Thank you, Christine.
Oh, thanks, Christine.
Well, we have one more presentation by my friends at NextFab. I have Anna joining me tonight. She is co-hosted. Are you in the audience, Anna? I see you.
Here. Yes, I'm not. I think we're still in speaker view.
There you are. Hi, Anna.
Hello.
So Anna and I have been working together for almost a year now on an upcoming digital conference, Tools of the Trades. And I want to thank her for being here tonight to talk with all of you about what exactly this means. It's March 23rd through the 25th. And conference attendees will have exclusive access to experts, resources, and peers working in Philadelphia and the craft community. So there's going to be informative webinars, networking events, and instructional materials to provide attendees with a unique roadmap for crafting business plans and what success means to them. And we're doing an in-person closing event Saturday, March 26th from 4 to 6 p.m. During happy hour at the new NextFab location at 1800 North American Street. And I saw my friend Leah Coonan in the audience. She's a jewelry maker. She's going to be vending. We're getting some vendors together, and we're going to have food and drink and music, and I hope everyone will come. So Anna, thank you for joining us again, and please share your presentation with our audience.
Great. Yeah, let me just get that up. Can everyone see presentation? Can't see anybody. I see nods. Okay, we're on our way. Thank you, Layla, for the great introduction. My name is Anna Solomon. I am the sales manager at NextFab. For those of you who don't know what NextFab is, it is a makerspace in Philadelphia and Wilmington region. And we have been working on this programming collaboration for over a year now. You know, back in 2020, all of us were moving to digital programming, as we are still in today. This is where Craft Now approached us, seeing that we had run a few webinars based around getting crafters, people who make hands-on things online so they can actually sell their work. Craft Now had a similar desire to start this type of programming, so we have been working together to develop this conference. It sort of grew into a 3-day event, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the concept behind it and the opportunities that are going to be at this conference. So very briefly, you know, tools of the trades, a term coined by Layla, is a digital conference for makers by makers focused on connecting artisans to business resources in the Philadelphia region and beyond. Craft Now, as you may have known, has done extensive research into what the barriers are for craft-based artists, businesses in the area to actually having long-term success. So using some of that data and feedback, we were able to curate 3 days of direct access to creative experts and business support services that fit those needs. The other key point of this is we're going to have opportunities to engage with presenters and audience members directly through live questions, interactive sessions, as well as a marketing post-event directory. So there are 3 main components to this event that's happening this March. We are having 14 webinars with 19 regional experts. We are picking people who we've either had been recommended in the past who have worked with makers and artists, or are makers and artists themselves, so they can speak from their own experience and actually break some larger topics down into practical steps. In-person networking event, as Layla mentioned, will be happening on Saturday, March 25th. That is going to be at the NextFab location that we just opened in 2020 with, you know, some drinks, some food, an exhibition, and we're hoping that people who attend these digital webinars will actually be able to meet in person on that day. And lastly, the piece we're really excited about is our digital toolkit. So this is taking all of that learning that our artists have had for the past 3 days and turning it into actionable steps. So we're getting recommendations from our 19 experts. We are reaching out to service providers who we have been familiar with for the past couple of years, and providing you know, courses on how to update and create a website, or even 15-minute office hours when people could just sit down and ask a question if they need to. There's 3 main pillars to this event. So we have tools in business. So this is foundations of business. Something that we've seen at NextFab for the past 13 years is a lot of people have an artistic practice, but they don't always have something officially filed like an LLC. And this can open up people for funding opportunities. This can help them start to think about how to make their practice sustainable over a long period of time. So we have selected a number of topics, including why to actually start an LLC, taxes, legal. So you think you can freelance. This is about contracts with the Philadelphia Volunteer Lawyers for the Arts. Growing your business online, so establishing a presence and a website, and then ultimately finding funding. So what options are right for you? Is it grants, loans, crowdsourcing? We're going to talk about all of those things. Our second pillar is a bit, I find it the most exciting grouping for the creatives, which is tools for creatives. This is talking about, you know, prototyping your products, so or even your art. thinking about how you can actually start small before you start to invest in higher grade materials, going into gaining confidence in your craft. So thinking about it from the perspective of something that's going to have longevity, like some of the pieces we saw tonight, and be interesting for curators to actually put into galleries or stores. Then we're talking about social media, keeping business covered, and then also art of the pop-up, how to stage a temporary or successful temporary retail event. And lastly, this is a pillar of topics that we actually have invited someone who is great with experiential learning to design these for networking and community topics. So one of the biggest things that we got in feedback of as we were developing this conference was that success doesn't look the same for everyone. So we're going to put that right up front and say, you know, define the success for yourself. Does success look like I am only practicing art and have no other job? Does it look like I have a studio practice, but I still have a full-time job that, you know, practices on the side? We're going to be talking about that and saying, you know, it doesn't look the same for everyone, and this will help set expectations as to taking in information throughout the event. Then we have 3 other topics. So talking about triple bottom line and sustainability, BIPOC in business, and then emergence professional pathways is actually talking to students entering the workforce and how to actually navigate the opportunities that are available. We have a number of participating organizations. I am not going to list all of them, but we have people from Philadelphia, Wilmington, Baltimore, and Pittsburgh, which is really exciting. So this is a statewide event. We actually have received statewide funding for this, which is very exciting. And I just want to call it the Clay Studio because I saw Jennifer here today. They will be she will be participating in the as a curator, talking about how to gain confidence in your craft to actually show in a gallery. So that's really exciting. And we have a website, so tickets are on sale now. And I wanted to call out that we have had some very generous sponsors. I have listed them all here. I needed to make more space for them because we've had a lot of people who have been donating and willing to donate. So that has been wonderful. And so we actually have been able to offer our tickets at 75% off, which is amazing. We want to make this as affordable as possible for artists. We are taking scholarships as well for artists who, you know, especially students who may not want to purchase a ticket price, but this is lowering the barrier to entry for as many people as possible. And thank you. That's it. Does anyone have any questions?
So what are tickets before the 75% off?
$50 a ticket. And with the 70% off, that takes them down to $12.50.
That's a pretty good deal.
Yes.
I have to say it's been a real pleasure to work with Anna and Rebecca and Jess at NextFab. Collaboratively, they've let me bring some ideas that I pulled together from our survey and research, and they've brought in their own ideas and their own networks. And we're at this point just really excited to see what happens, and we want to make this an annual event. So please share the news with anyone you think would be interested. So yeah, we can give it a try, see what sticks. Well, that, unless anyone has any final questions or remarks, would conclude our program for the evening. I have put some links in the chat for you to learn more about all of our presenters and to sign up for the Tools of the Trades conference. And of course, please, follow Craft Now on social media, Craft Now PHL. Consider a donation through our website, craftnowphila.org. And I'd like to invite everyone to unmute themselves and say hello for a couple of minutes, and then we'll close the program.
Hello. Leah from Leah
Hello.
Creation Jewelry. I'm so excited for all the work you put in and checking everything out. I'm really excited. I've been on like a go. Let's get this done. And everything that you've been supplying me with has been really moving me forward thus far. And I'm so appreciative. And I'm just like taking it all in, ladies, taking it all in.
So Leah, we should give her a round of applause because she attended our CEA grant session in December and was awarded a grant through the PCA, CEA being Creative Entrepreneur Accelerator, I think. So congratulations to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Now I'm trying to navigate my new camera so I can put my products up and really showcase how beautiful they are. But that's a whole other learning curve right there.
So and speaking of photography, one interesting thing we were talking with, and Anna was in on this call, we were talking with Katie Johnson from the Creative Business Accelerator in Pittsburgh, and she's doing a program on funding. And she was like, how do I make something that's really intimidating, more approachable? And so she was talking about thinking about what your assets are when you go to apply for funding, and good photographs was one of them. So
Most important.
Yeah, it can make or break a piece.
yeah. So that's spoken by Rick Snyderman, who would know because all the portfolios he's reviewed through the years. And Ruth, how are you? Happy New Year.
Thanks, same to you. And we want to have a hello to Leslie, whom we haven't seen in a while. She can't come down our stairs anymore and greet us at this, first Fridays.
I think you need to reopen. You need to reopen that gallery.
Well,
No, thank
that
you.
building has a beautiful space now.
Well, Leslie, the part of the collection you showed is the tip of the iceberg, as you know. But the most amazing collection of things that you never would have imagined happened in your life is in that building. Years ago, I was asked to give a lecture at Winterthur about contemporary woodworking to the conservators program there. And I asked the director, I said, well, okay, I'm happy to do that, but I'm just curious, why would you want a conversation about contemporary woodworking? Isn't the most recent piece you have in your collection about 1760? She said, yes, I think that's right. Well, it turned out, of course, these are going to be the curators and the conservators of the next generation who knew nothing about contemporary furniture. And so that's why they asked me to come. So here was my deal. I said, you know what? I know there are lots of rooms at Winterthur that the people don't get to see. The public, it's not open to the public. I wanted to come down there that morning. The lecture was going to be in the evening. And I want to spend the entire day going through all the rooms that nobody gets to see. And I saw such a collection of extraordinary ceramics from 17th century England, the serving work that some of the serving work you showed, also some of the terrines. I mean, it was just an amazing outpouring of creativity. And you thought, the English, they're so stiff. And no, they weren't stiff at all. They had all these fantasies, all these wonderful fantasies. So, the idea that, we live in a contemporary time, and these are the times when we think about creativity, it was always there. It was just in a different form. And it's great to see some of that work. But the whole idea of what's going on with Next Fab is really amazing, because it's another world out there that's working in tandem and right beside this larger world and the two worlds don't really connect very well. I mean, they haven't connected very well. And it's a connection we really need to make. I mean, there's so much stuff going on in Philadelphia that nobody knows about. So I really thank you all for doing this. It was a great presentation. Anna, you were wonderful. I could follow you anywhere.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm very excited to connect our community to the history of craft, because I think that's something that a lot of people aren't aware of, that they're adding to a long legacy of people in the Philadelphia area.
I keep hoping that there'll be a time when gang like all of you, and others will just come to Winterthur, because we do hands-on, you can handle the Posset Pots. It's one of the few museums left that is not so overwhelmed with insurance-related restrictions that we can't teach with the objects. So, we've got furniture, ceramics, glass, textiles, metalwork, horn, all sorts of great objects and we do conferences where people rotate through and they get to handle things. We do have artists who have come to us in the past, and we also have internships, and I shouldn't say internships, grant, I'm being prompted from the wings here, but we have a grant program for maker creators, and people come anything from a week to months on end. We also, of course, are attracting other scholars who are working with older stuff. But that combination of old and new is something we're really trying to embrace here, and we try to help folks make it be affordable. So please tell people Anna, that might be something that's useful for people who are working with you as well. Layla already knows about us quite a bit, but we can share information about the grants, and we love having folks come, and we actually display some of those works on site too. Not everything, but some.
Yeah, that would be wonderful for the community. I'll get some information from Layla.
Look at that. That's why it's good to have industry night.
We've got 90,000 objects to show you. So we'll keep her busy for a while.
And Christine, again, put the fellowship link in the chat. She's on it tonight. Well, with that, I'm going to say good night to everyone. Thank you all so much for being here.
Nice to see you again.
Thanks.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Join us
Bye.
on March 26th at Tools of the Trade.
All right. That's.
Thanks.
Have a great night.